So what is the minimum setup that you need when starting a business? And there is so much information out there about what you need and all the things that you need to do. But honestly, there's a concept that starts much smaller than that. And it really gives you the ability to be able to test out whether or not your business is going to kick off. But also, and I mean that from the customers being interested in it, but I also mean about you, because when we turn our creative passions into a business, it's not always what we think, and the real truth about it as well is that the creation of your product is really a smaller part of the business than you probably think. So it's important that you give yourself enough time and grace to understand whether or not you want to turn it into a business. So today we're just going to cover really what are the bare minimums that you might need to actually kick off your creative business. If you're new here, my name's Lena and I'm the very proud owner of Made It, which is the leading handmade marketplace for artisans in Australia. And we focus on small scale artists, so all the earrings, the ceramics, the knitting, the crochet, the small wall art. I mean, honestly, there's over 15,000 products and 800 artisans, so we have so much to share with you. But my passion is really in helping artisans to sell online and making this journey much easier. So if you're new here, welcome. And if you're returning, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. It's great to see you again. But let's jump in. Let's go into what's the minimum setup. Now, there's a concept that I've spoken about, and if you know me already, you would have heard me talk about it, but the MVP model, which is the minimum viable product. And it's around this concept of the lean startup, which Eric Rice has developed. I'll put the link down below. But it's this whole concept about what is the minimum viable product that I can create to take to market in order to test out the business model before I invest too much. And when we talk about investing, often we always think about investing as a monetary thing, but the biggest resource in my life, in my world, is my time. And for you, I'm sure it's the same. So it's important that you're able to check that first. So how many products do you need to have? Look, it really depends. It depends on what you're making. Now, I know many of you know that I come from the world of fashion. And for fashion, it's a bit different because you do need to be able to order, have multiple sizes. And I know that we have many artisans who are creating pieces where, in particular with kids' clothing, where it might just be for a 2-year-old. And I understand that from a capacity aspect, but the reality is that if you're wanting to do fashion, if you're wanting to do clothing, offering more than one size is really crucial because it's part of that trust building, especially when we're selling online, that people want to know that they can try different sizes to get the right fit, especially with clothing. Fit is so important. But let's say that you've got a different type of gift. Let's say that you've got an artisan gift that you're creating. Let's do earrings for an example. When we're talking about the minimum number that you'd want to have in your store, you've got to think about where it is that you're selling. So if you're doing the markets as an example, it's about the number of items that you might need to have there in order to be able to engage the customer to get their interest. And the same thing goes for online. And the best way for you to wrap your head around this is to go out and be an inspector for the day or go out and be an inspector for the month and go and have a look at perhaps other artisans or other businesses that are operating in your space and have a look at what they've got. Now, interestingly enough, when it comes to fashion, I actually find that when you go somewhere and they have too many items, I can't make a decision. It's an overwhelm of actually looking at all those things. Now, the same thing as well goes for something like jewelry. There's a fine line by having enough to make the customer be able to make a decision on what they like, but not having too much so that you're overwhelming them. Now, if we want to simplify this into a bit of a guide, right, when it comes to selling online, I think that you want to have at least 10 to 12 listings for the customer to look at, especially in that very early stage. Now, let's say, for example, you might make children's playhouses or something a little bit bigger. You might be sitting more in that 5 to 10 range, but anything under 5 items it almost works the same as having too many items. So too few and too many are actually the same thing, if that makes sense. The customer can't make a decision because in the too few, there's not enough for them to have a look at what they do like, what they don't like. And then in the too many, it's just complete overwhelm and they don't end up making a decision. But so if we just, for the purpose of this video, stick at about that 10 to 12 items as a starting point for you to keep in mind about what you might need to have in order to actually get started. The second stage of that minimum viable product when it comes to starting your creative business and selling online in particular is to think about the whole journey for the customer and what they're actually going through. And you can start off right at the beginning, right? It's about how they're going to discover you, then how they're going to start to look at your products. Then it's about them thinking about purchasing the products. It's about them actually purchasing the products. It's about you sending out the products, and it's about you getting a review or feedback at the end. So when we have those laid out, and you can just literally do this with pen and paper, you can write it out, get each of those stages and think about, well, what is the minimum viable product? What is the minimum viable approach that I would need at each of those stages in order to be able to kick off a business? So when we break that down into all of those different sections, right, let's start off with that discovery phase. So when we're talking about discovery phase, and again, you're just testing, right, is about, well, what am I going to need at that point in order to be able to be discovered? Now, at that point, you may not actually need a business page to get started if we're talking about social media. At this stage, you may actually be able to start this off on your personal Instagram or Facebook, because that might be enough for you to be able to showcase what you're doing, but also showcase it with people that you already know and people that you've got a connection with, because they're going to be able to give you great feedback and also encouragement. Encouragement is such an important part of starting off, that you need to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that are going to give you really positive feedback. And I don't mean false feedback, but I mean that even if they're giving you feedback that may not be like, hey, it's amazing, it might be feedback like, hey, have you thought about this? You just still want to make sure that you're immersed around people that are giving you that warm and kind feedback in order for you to be able to grow and evolve in this part of the journey. So from there, in that discovery phase, right, it's about going, well, how can I share? Now, you might want to start doing some posts and perhaps you're doing some video or some photography to showcase what you're making. But one of the other areas that I can strongly recommend that you get involved in is Facebook groups. Now, the reason why I say that is that because they're a closed network, it means that you're getting a much more targeted approach to who you might be wanting to share your products with, rather than with just general social media. It can actually be harder to get traction. But you might find that there's specific handmade groups that you can be a part of, or artisan groups that you can be a part of, where you can start to share what it is that you're working on, and it will also help you gain your confidence at that stage. Now, when we jump over to the next part of that journey, and that's about how the customer is going to be able to look at your products. Now, of course, in Meta, with Facebook and Instagram, you can actually list your items as products if it's with a business page. So that might be something to consider as well. But you want to have somewhere really simple where customers can go and view your products without having to ask any questions. And that's where, you know, with what we've created with Made It being a marketplace where artisans can list their products, you know, from $10 a month, right? It's an incredible opportunity. But it means that you're creating a space where your customers can go and view your product, view what the shipping costs are, get all the details, see all the parts, and then they might want to reach out to you and have a conversation. Or they may just even go ahead and actually purchase, or they may save it for later and have a think about it to know that it's there, and when the right time is, they can come back and purchase from you. Now, you always want to make sure that wherever you're showcasing your products, whether it's through Facebook, whether it's through Instagram in their store, or whether you've got a store on Made It, or, you know, perhaps you've got a store on Etsy, or perhaps you've got your own website, whatever that looks like, you just want to make sure that it's a super simple checkout for customers to actually have that opportunity to buy from you. I know that many artists, when they're starting out, they tend to just make the purchase where send me a message and we can coordinate coordinate the sale. And look, that has a lot of merit because it means that you can actually engage with the customer and talk to them. But I also just want to put it out there that you might be losing multiple opportunities by having that as the only way that someone can buy from you. I know that for me personally, I like to go and have a little dig around. I want to see what the shipping costs are, especially when it's with my friends as well, because I don't want to be in that awkward situation where they haven't shared the price of the product, they haven't shared the cost of the shipping. And then when I go through and perhaps it's outside my budget at that time and I'm like, oh, it's not right for me right now, or I can't afford it right now. But I'm so conscious of not having my friend think that I'm devaluing what they're doing, that I thought it was cheaper. But so having somewhere where someone, your customers, your following, your friends, your family can independently view what the cost of your product is and what the cost of shipping is such a great benefit for you to be able to create that minimum viable product. Now, an absolutely crucial step that I have not shared yet, which needed to go right back at the beginning, but is about if you're going to be selling your products online, you need to be able to actually showcase them. And this is done through two formats: photography and video, right? Photos and videos. They're the two things that you need to have of your products. And I'm going to say, even as that minimum viable product, you need both. Now, I know that so many creatives just focus on the photos, and video is such an important part because one of the things that I found in my fashion label that we built up and built very successfully, pure play online, and only through our own website, was the power of video, because it took away the fear or any of the doubts or any of the questions that customers had about what is the actual product, what does it feel like? And in the video, that's where you can really showcase the touch, the feel, the size, the scale very, very quickly. And it means that the customer can rest assured that what they're buying from you, they understand what it is before they actually get it. And if you want to check out the video that I've done on setting up a really simple backdrop, which you can use for photos and videos, check it out. I'll pop it below as well so that you can have a look at that. But the minimum setup that you're going to need for that, honestly, don't worry about a camera at this stage. I mean, if you're a photographer and you've got a great camera, or you already know how to use a beautiful camera, go forth. Lucky you. My brain just can't work it out yet. Can't work it out yet. But our smartphones are so smart, and the camera capability is so strong that the only two pieces of equipment that I think that you need when you're starting out is a very sturdy tripod and a light. And I've gone back and forth with my thoughts on getting a light in the early stages, whether or not you need it. And I'm going to say that $100 to $150 investment for you to get a great light that means that you can have the right lighting on your product at any stage. I think that is part of the minimum viable product. I really do. And it's about you being able to showcase the beauty and the quality of your product, because the one thing that you want to make sure that you're getting right from the beginning is great photos. And that doesn't mean they have to be professional, but it does mean that you're taking the time and you're putting the energy into getting those great photos. Having video, giving it a go, right? We can go messy and imperfection and a little bit imperfect on the video, but let's really work hard on getting those great photos. I heard some great feedback from one of my coaches, and he was saying that it's really interesting because so many people spend so much time on their product, but they actually forget about that marketing of the product. And even when we're talking about that minimum viable product at the early stage, having beautiful photography is such an important part of what you're doing. And we're going to be sharing lots more tips and tricks about that, about how you can get good photos as well. So subscribe, follow along. There'll be lots more to come in that space. So as part of the MVP, you also really need to think about how you're going to actually be getting the product from you to the customer. Now, if I had my time again, and I probably will, I always have something brewing in the back of my mind, but my time again with the product business, right, and creating product, is I would be much more strategic about how it's getting sent. Shipping and freight has changed so much in the last few years, since that little blip in the globe for all of us in 2020, but it really changed the cost as well of what it looks like to actually ship products. So if I was starting again, I would be much more strategic about going, hey, what's the best size box? What's the best size packaging that's affordable, that's sustainable, that's conscious, right? But also that means that I can keep my shipping costs as low as possible. Now, if you're someone who's doing something like ceramics where it's very fragile, what is some of the packaging that you can get to really reduce the amount of packaging that you get, but make sure that it gets to your customer in one go without the freight costing a fortune? Now, that being said as well, this kind of goes hand in hand with the fact that your pricing is a really important part of getting started. And you may not get it right from the beginning. I know that I didn't get it right from the beginning. I don't know really anyone who got it right from the beginning. But understanding pricing and understanding the value of free shipping as well, especially when we're talking about the gift space, is really important. Now, if you're doing, say, bigger scale artwork, there's absolutely going to be a cost of freight that you may not be able to build into the cost when you're starting out, into the price of the product. It might be something that you have to do separately. But I'd love to invite you as a tester, right? Because one of our values here at Made It is about staying curious, learning and evolving, right? And testing out everything. But once you start to get a little bit of momentum, try doing a free shipping weekend just with your friends and family and see what happens. And of course, you know, there's a cost to keep in mind, but we want to make sure that the price that we're putting into our products gives us a little bit of space so that we can have those promotions, we can have those times where we offer something special, but that's something that we're going to come into much later down the track. So the shipping of your product is not just about, you know, the outside layer. It's not just about the cost. You are going to need to know all of those things, right? Take some items down to the post office or get some scales and literally weigh your product, work it all out and use the calculator online to calculate freight. But it's what's in the box. And you know, when you're starting out, and there was a trend for a really long time about writing a handmade, like handwritten note within each product. And that was probably when I was kicking off in fashion. And we used to literally handwrite every single note that went into the box or went into the package with the dresses that were going out. It is so powerful. It is so powerful. Now, I'm not saying that you have to write an essay, but I'm saying that if someone has taken the time, if someone has decided to invest in you by purchasing some of your products, what would it really take you to take a couple of minutes to write, "Hey Jen, thanks so much for your purchase. Warm regards, Sally," right? That little note actually means so much, and it's a beautiful way in which we can create connection with the customer at that time. But it's also an opportunity for you to ask them to do something at that point, have a call to action. And I really encourage you, even in the early stages, to make that really simple. Now, if you hand wrote on that note, I'd love to get your feedback, or I'd love to, pretty please, I'd love to ask for a review. Or even better, you know, I'd love it if you could share a photo with me of this piece in your home or whatever it is that suits to your product. But something really simple like that. To be honest, most people that are buying handmade, most people that are buying artisan gifts will be really considerate when it comes to that aspect, and will be really happy to share if it means that it's also going to grow you as an artisan. Because as humans, we want to be the first ones to know about the next great thing, and you may just be the next great thing. So allow your customers that opportunity to really help you grow in your journey as well. So those are the steps that I would really recommend for you starting out with that minimum viable product. You know, as far as how you're going to market it and how you're going to share it from there, oh, that's going to have to be in another video. There's so much to dive into, and marketing and simplifying the journey online is something that I'm super passionate about. So I can't wait to share that with you. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for liking the video and engaging, writing a comment down below. I want to connect with you. But also, I really hope that you subscribe to the channel so that we can grow on this journey together. We can grow together because we're always stronger together. Have an awesome day.